Heyo. So, in the last video I talked about making the best of the basic paints that you get with the basic starter set. How you can use them to mix up different colours without going out and buying a vast array of shades of blue to make one shade of blue. In this video, it's a complete contrast, but in the fact that I'm going to talk about contrast paints, which are personally my favourite thing to use. Contrast paint can be quite daunting if you're not sure what to do with them, so here we go. Colour wise, you basically get the same colours as you get in the normal sets. However, with these pots, you basically get the shade and the highlight in one hit, which is why, for me, they're brilliant, because this saves so much time. Best thing to do though, if you're not sure how to use them, get yourself some old sprue. For this one, I've got a piece from an old Sentinel kit. Some parts I didn't use. It's already primed with a white primer, so it's an ideal starter point. You've got plenty of highlighting options there. You've got raised bits, you've got sunken bits. Give a good wash. Along with that, I found two Orc Boys that I had built but not painted yet. On the right, I've got the guy I've done in Wrathbone, and on the left, he's primed in grey and has a bone colour over his flesh. I'll get back to that bit later. For now, though, we'll talk about using sprues. Now, using sprues is great because there's that many different colours. Oh, I don't know how this is going to look. I don't know how it's going to look over the base colour I've put down. If I put a light base coat, will it look as bright as it will? If I use a dark base coat, will it look darker? Answer is yeah. It's simple as that if you're doing that. Good thing to look out for as well, if you're not using it for a while, you do get this sort of build up, a good shake, or in my case a vortex mixer, and it's sorted for you. So, orc flesh. Because I've got orcs, why not use orc flesh? Get your paint, load up on your brush, get your sprue, sign something on the sprue that you want to paint. In this, we'll take this bit of plasma gun here, it's got some recesses, and literally slap it on. Work quite quick with it, because if it starts to dry, you can get little tide marks where your dry meets your wet. But as long as you move it around quite quickly, you should be fine. As you can see, it starts to leave little pools in the recesses, and then on the edges, on any raised parts, you get like a bit of a lighter tone. This is because how the paint works, it generally stains rather than paints, so it runs off and sinks in. Different colour green, same premise, absolutely the same premise. But you don't know what it's looked like, so bit of sprue, do a side-by-side comparison. Simple as, depends what kind of orcs you want to go for. I use a lot of these greens for Imperial Guard because, you know, the military looking green, really good, and you do sort of get that sort of texture at times. So that's it, used over white. Just, again, it's such a simple thing. Bit of spare sprue, rather than chuck it in the bin, paint it up or primer it. And as you can see, you've got little pools there, you can move it around. And just keep the paint moving. So, second bit of sprue I've got here is a sprue that is primed grey. It's actually some spare arms from the orcs. You can use, rather than using a part, just use the actual bit of sprue, because you do get some bits where you can have it flat and a bit of an edge, so you can sort of see, but obviously it's always better to look a part of the model. So here we're going to use the same colour over just a standard grey prime versus the bony coloured look that I put on. So, bit of backstory, when I first got these orcs, I decided to do a rainbow orc little squad, so each colour of the rainbow was represented. Because I wasn't using contrast and I was using layer paints, I decided that I wanted them to make sure the colours really stood out and popped. So best way to do that was to use a lighter tone as my base colour, for then the bright colour then to look brighter. So that's the be all end all of why I've done that. It's just a happy coincidence that I get to show you here what it looks like over a different base paint, basically. And as you will see, there's a complete contrast between the two. on the paint that's already got the paint underneath, you can get more of a yellowy tinge, and you might think, oh, it looks a bit patchy, that doesn't look quite good, that. Trust the process, because the worst thing that can happen is you need to get a second go, or you need to go back over it again, which, because they're so thin paints, you're not going to lose no detail. To be honest, as far as I'm aware, contrast paints actually stain rather than paint, so you're not actually putting layers on as such. But a good way to get a bit of contrast, the same colour, same part, there you go. So now, we'll get on to this lab. What I want to do is use a lot of different colours. Orcs are fun to paint because you can be as wild as you want. You don't need to be all grim dark. You can slap some colours on them. I recommend looking at an artist called Dice and Demons. Absolutely stunning, neon. Honest, go and look. I'll put a link in the description. So, like I said, bright colours. I'm going to use some of my favourites. Some colours are very pigment heavy and some are quite light with the pigments, so you will see that some cover a lot better than what some don't. Your standard, you've got browns, so you've got your snakebite leather, which is leather. Wildwood, again, for me it's one of my favourite browns. Skeleton Horde is, while it looks brown, it is bone, and that is absolutely godsend colour. It's one of my favourites to use for skulls, for teeth, for claws, anything like that. Absolutely magic in a bottle. The only thing I will tend to use is I use the base silvers and metallics, because you can't really get that metallic look with the contrast paints. And if like magic, here he is again. So, the game started, grab some orc flesh, give it a shake, get your big brush, because we are literally slapping this on. We're not being careful, or like we're getting it on. So, boom, there you go. And anyone watching this will probably be going, oh, look at that joint. And yeah, there is a bad joint gap between the arm and the torso, but I'm not exactly bothered, because I'm not here to show you how to build a model. I'm here to show you how the contrast paints work. Or, in my views, how the contrast paints work, because I'm still learning too. Every day is a learning day. You might walk off this channel and go, oh, I didn't know that. You might go, oh, I didn't know that. Doesn't matter. You took the time to watch. So I'm not really bothered about things like that. I'm not trying to be neat. I'm trying to get it done so you can see and showcase what the contrast paints can do and will do for you. But honestly, I cannot recommend them enough. As you can see, nice thick coat if you like. Make sure your brush is quite loaded. Get it in. Orcs are really fun to paint with contrast paints, I found, because they have a lot of textures and a lot of depth to them, so you can have the muscly arms where the paint will sink nicely into them recesses of the muscles, whereas then you've got the tight grip down the axe, so you get the white knuckle effect where the paint is running away from the knuckles, and it just gives you that sort of varied skin tone, because obviously skin, as you know, if you look at your arms now, your hands, you'll see it's not one block colour, and that's what these tend to do. The contrast paints do seem to have this lovely effect of, in some places being one shade and this place has been another shade. Again, it's just, if you're doing this with layer paints, right now you're putting a base coat of one green, you go and get a lighter green, you put that over the top, get another green, you put that on, you probably do a bit of wet blending, then you get maybe a wash and do a wash, and then you go back over again with a light colour and do some edge highlights, and you get an orange or blue and put that on because it's contrast, and it'll bring the eyes out. And for me, I cannot get round doing edge highlights. I cannot get round doing multi-layered highlights. Either I haven't got the patience, I haven't got the steady hand for it. Contrast paints for me, I honestly wish I knew about contrast paints properly before I bought all my other layer paints, because I wouldn't have bought a single one. Well, apart from metallics. So again, round the eyes. If you want something, the only thing I will say here about being careful is, if you are painting orcs, is to be careful around things like teeth or something that you may want lighter. Because you're using a green, if I got green on them teeth now and then I wanted the teeth to look a bone colour, I would then need to go back in with some Rathbone, paint over the green, might take a couple of layers to get rid of it, and start again. If you're a little bit careful, just going round, then you're sorted. So, while the green dries on him, grab this little guy, I'll show you some of the brown. This is one of my favourite browns to use, it's called Wildwood, and it just gives that sort of dark, leathery look. I just think it's a perfect, especially for this, doing it as you'll see, for trousers, yeah, forget it, it's perfect. Same concept, different area of body, get it slapped on, and you just let it do its own job, let it do what it's meant to do. If you try and force it into a certain pattern, which I've seen a lot of other painters do, with they're so used to using airbrushes or using multi-layered process, they just can't seem to simplify themselves and say, let it do its own job. They want to try and play with it a bit more. The more you play with it, the more issues you're going to have. But there you go, brown trousers, simple as. Have my camera will focus on them. Now, as I'm trying to be quite quick, I'm a bit naughty and not let it dry, which you can get away with it if you're steady enough. But I'm literally going to take out now the snakebite leather, which again, it's another brown, but it's a lot of lighter brown. I generally use this on things like pouches on my Space Marines because it's just a colour that it works well. So you'll see it will contrast here with like these leather straps, the belt. But if you do end up getting it on, if you do end up mixing with a wet tone next to it, like I have here on the belt, it's not the end of the world, because it does just mix together and you end up with a new tone of brown in some instances. And again, nothing in the real world is uniform colour. Not really. So, just a bit around there. Get his belt on, and then maybe slaps on his boots. So, as we all know, orcs, purple orcs, sneaky. I've not had a chance to use this purple yet, and when I did use this purple, I found it to be very light in pigment. I think that's the best terminology for it. In other words, it wasn't the best coverage. So, again, I don't know whether it's because I'd got the bone colour base down, I'm not sure. But, again, slap it on, trust the process. The worst thing that can happen is I let it dry, and then I go back over a second coat to just try and bring the vibrance back out on it. But it's not like I say, it's not the end of the world. Just remember, slap it on, make sure it's getting in the recesses, make sure it don't pull too much. Make sure you work around it quite quick so that you don't have any of them drying tired lines. And then once you're done with it, like I said, readdress it at a later stage. As always, brilliant camera work. I didn't realise how difficult it is actually painting while the camera's like bang next to your forehead. I'm trying to work around it. it's not the best. First world problems. So there you go, just a wet second coat if you like, just to try and keep a bit more of the pigment there and make sure that it wasn't pooling too much where I didn't want it to pool too much. But again, play with it too much, you make issues for yourself later down the line. So, back to this lad. And I believe this is Voluptuous Pink, which looks bright red, but again, it's one of my favourite colours to use. It's brilliant on Sister of the Battle. But let's get his little ponytail. Let's do it bright pink, because why not? Pink and green should never be seen. But as you can see, different texture with it in the hair. You get the darkness patch where the ink, the paint runs into the crevices and fills up, and when that dries it will dry dark. But then because there's lots of little strands, it lets a bit more of the base come through, and while it stains it, you get a lighter tone. So don't think of it as I need to get a thicker coat on. Think of it more of as I need to get a better coating of ink, a better stain. Oh, let's do his tongue. Or tongue, depending where you're from. Now this model in total took roughly 35 to 40 minutes. If you were to do it with proper drying times, I cheated and used a hairdryer at one point, and for the majority of it I didn't use any drying time, I just worked around the wet. So you're talking per model, say roughly 40 minutes, 45 minutes to an hour, depending how slow you want to take it, but or how dry, how fast your paint is drying. Contrast paints do tend to dry a lot faster than your standard layer and base paints. Again, I believe that's just down to the fact that it is more of a stain rather than a paint. Obviously layer paints go on in layers, contrast paints just make your model look pretty. Now, unfortunately, due to my expertise of recording, this section now is going to be me just painting the model, essentially. So I'm going to be a bit quiet and let you just basically take in what's going on. I'll give you a quick rundown, any bits. Something like this, I've decided to use a yellow. Again, looking at the pot, it looks yellow, this one actually. There is one that looks orange, but it's yellow. So while it's gone on bright yellow, it will dim down, dull down. A little bit there, a little bit on his top of his ponytail, because it's the same thing. If it's a bit of material, if you've got to think is he's wrapped a bit of cloth around his wrist, maybe that's the same cloth he's used to tie his ponytail up with. Why not? Why not have some little bit of a consistency between parts? It's all fun and games having just random colours, but hey, let's make sure something has some consistency. But what orc wouldn't be seen dead on the battlefield without his bright blue trousers? When I say bright blue, oh, I mean bright blue. This is a lovely colour to use, to be honest. When I talk about the high pigments and colours that really do pop, this is definitely one of them that pops. Thalasar blue. It is really nice. It is also really good for energy weapons, I've found. If you're going to use contrast on energy weapons, put a base down of a white or a off-white first. Then use this as your next stage up. From there, will choice to really use whatever next blues up, and depending what method you're using, to finish off, but I would definitely say that this is a nice blue to use for any weapons, as it's the contrast. Depending what you've used it on, you will get the automatic highlight and shade from the weapon with the same blue, and it'll have that nice, vibrant. It already looks like it's glowing, so why not use it? So as you can see, I'm not really giving any drying time here. I'm going from pot to pot to pot. And this is fine. You can do this if you've got a steady of hand. It's not an issue. You can end up coating parts that you don't want to coat. Like I said, I'm trying to be quick, but at the same time, you can see watching this how quick using contrast paints you are able to finish a model. So if you think, if you were working to drying times, you've got 5, 6 troops in front of you, be them orcs, be them Cadians, be them Space Marines, be them demons, whatever. No matter what you're painting, if you've got a couple of them in front of you, you go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. By the time you've painted the 5th one, number 1's ready to paint. So if you go down with your greens and then come back, I said, right, I'm going to be browns now, and go all the way through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Come back, I'm going to move to maybe blue now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're not slowing down as much as where you would be doing one model, start to finish, that's 40 minutes. Next model, 40 minutes. Next model, 40 minutes. Potentially doing it like that, batch painting if you like, where you do it in groups of 5, or I would say if you're going to start out doing that, maybe 3s, 5s. The most I've done, I believe, was 10. And to be honest, I got fed up. So just work to within your limits, basically. But it is a nice way to get through things quicker, especially if you're going to be playing on tabletop. If you're painting if you're painting just to display, then I would definitely recommend taking more time, making sure you've got drying times, making sure you've got designate an hour or so to one colour and work to that, then give it time to dry, then move on, then move back. Whereas, as you can see here, I'm literally just going next pot, next pot, next pot. Whereas if I've got a couple more models to paint at the same time, this wouldn't be an issue, because by the time I've done model number 5, no, model number 6, and I've painted his brown boots, model number 1 is ready for his axe painting or his gun painting, and you're not having that dilemma, and you're not wasting any time as such, because what might take you 40 minutes to do 1 is taking you an hour to do 5, say. You're not... It's like a production. It's probably a good way to get around it. But as you can see, you know, it really does work fast. There's no denying it, and there's no real trick to it as such. Not that what I would say anyway. It's just get it on it. Just get the paint on the brush and get it on the model. Simple as that. Just work quick with it, because, like I said, that's the biggest risk you've got, is leaving these little tired lines. But again, they're not the end of the world, because you could always just get a wash or another coat of the paint that you're using. So if you were to be using a green skin and you're a bit slow getting round, and you thought, I've left a bit of mark there, you could go back over with the same green. That should cure it. Failing that, and this goes as well for if you were to paint your orcs, for example, you're painting your orcs green, but you're not using contrast, so you're using standard layer paints. If you get yourself some Athonian camo shade in the shade, so you've got your Null Nile, Agrax Earth shade, camo shade, it is exactly the same, but it has a green tint. Same as you can get yourself some crimson, you can get yourself some sepia tone. and they've all got their own little coloured backgrounds, so when you use them with designated colours, they work good. As well as if you did want to use contrast paints over layer paints, again that works fine because you do get more of a rich. I would recommend watering them down slightly maybe. So if you have used, say, again we'll go greens, if you use the green layer paint, little motorbike going past, nice one. If you use a green layer paint to paint your oak skin and you thought to yourself, you know what, I'm not entirely happy with that, but you pick yourself some orc flesh up, then you can go over that with a bit of watered down stuff. So, while I'm trying to get these in focus, what you will find is if you look at the bottles, so there's not much difference between them bottles then, especially between the snakebite leather and the skeleton horde. Honestly, when I bought them originally, I thought I'd been done and they'd sent me something with the wrong label on. They're not. So I've used snakebite leather on his jacket, and this is the skeleton horde on bone, which is what I generally use it on, bones. Clues in the name, skeleton. So it's not the same colour. And if you look online, you'll see that it shows you the colour that it is. It shows the colour that it sets, or the colour that it dries, as opposed to the colour that comes in the bottle. Because if they showed the colour that came in the bottle, there would be about 16 colours that all look exactly the same. And that, it's not exaggeration, I literally got a lot of them lined up next to each other, and I just thought, yeah, I've been done here, this is a scam. But trust the process. When you saying that, trust the process. So a little bit on the teeth, on the little skull on the top of his head, fingernails, I believe. I think I left them clear so I can get a bit of coat on them. And it's pretty much thereabouts anyway. After this stage, it's pretty much just get his glove, his bolter, or his shooter, whatever they call him, and his axe painted. Quicken it back to this lad while that dries. So as you can see, I've not put any more coats on since the last time you've seen him. So as it has dried, you can see it has dried better than what originally looked. Am I happy with it? Not really. That's what next coat's for. So here he is. I kind of skipped a few steps. I've used the contrast grey over the axe. I've used the flesh tears red on the shooter gun, whatever gun it is. I'm not sure. I'm not good on law. And then I've gone round and picked a few little highlights up, little metallic highlights with the lead belcher. And there he is. He's done for you. Contrast paints. There you go. I know that the axe is some sort of powered axe, so I will return to that on possibly another video, and I may show how to perhaps do some form of glowing energy weapons. Watch this space for that one. But there you go, contrast paints in a nutshell. Slap it on, work fast, trust the process, just have fun with it, because end of the day you can get some really good effects from using these paints. And well, proof it pudding. I've just done that guy in less than an hour. So hope you enjoy it. Hope you like the video. If you did like the video, please subscribe, hit the like button, drop a comment. Even if it's nasty comments, I'm not bothered. Comments. Constructive criticism. And the turntable of doom. So, end of the day, it'd be right. Crack on, build them, paint them, play them, whatever you're into, get it done. Feel free to comment and ask questions.